Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Now today is a little bit more of a rant. Yesterday I went into town to the jewelry district in New York, here on 47th Street, to help a friend find a watch, and I had to get a couple things repaired, some strap changes, and stuff like that, general maintenance. And I know a lot of the dealers there. So I walked around and took a look, and I was really shocked. Now, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Now, today I'm wearing something a little different. It is a vintage Breitling Chronomat two-tone with a blue dial. Now, I use vintage lightly because this is from the late 90s, and it's actually not my piece. A friend of mine is wearing it, and he said it wasn't keeping time, so he gave it to me to take care of it for him, and I'm just testing it out. One of the many perks of the job, right? So anyway, I was on 47th Street yesterday, and, a few watch dealers, some who I know pretty well, some who I don't, some watchmakers. The way it works, it's one street, it's the jewelry district, it's full of diamond dealers and watch dealers, and in every building, there's usually something called an arcade, which, is a big room filled with little booths. Every dealer has a little booth. And I saw some things that shocked me, appalled me as a watch lover. Things that, I knew happened, but I haven't really experienced it since I started my YouTube channel, because I'm not really much of a gray market guy. But, I saw it yesterday, and I just had to talk about it. The things, these watch dealers do to their watches that unsuspecting collectors have no idea. And I know I get a lot of flack because I give the gray market grief, and people are like, Federico, you're biased. You used to work, for ADs. You used to work for Richemont. You don't know what you're talking about. The truth is, guys, this stuff happens all the time. And, believe it or not, maybe it's because a lot of you don't actually spend a lot of times in places like this, but trust me, you need to do your homework. So the first thing I did was I walked up to a booth because he had a few great looking watches, and I wanted to ask him a question. And, the etiquette is, if there's someone else at the booth, you kind of wait your turn. And, of course, this is not a customer service centric part of the industry, so you could be waiting a while. So I'm there waiting, a little bit while the guy behind the booth is talking, crap with the guy, haggling with the customer in front of him. And I see his watchmaker who's sitting next to him. And what is this guy doing? Well, this guy's opening up two Rolexes, and this is in not in a normal, workbench for a watchmaker. This is, crap all over it. I mean, it's dusty, there's just crap all over it. There's like a turkey sandwich on the table. And this guy's opening up two Rolex casebacks, and I'm like, okay, whatever, no big deal. And then I start observing. What does he do next? He takes a screwdriver, takes out two screws on the movement, flips the watch upside down to take the movement out of the watch with the dial attached to it, wearing no gloves. No gloves at all, so his greasy frickin' palm is all over this Rolex rotor. And by the way, you guys might say, oh, what's the big deal? Trust me, every watchmaker uses these finger protectors because grease from your hands really looks ugly on the movements of watches, and it really transfers over. And it was a gold Daytona and a two-tone Daytona. And what does the guy do? He takes the movement out of one, puts it on the side. He doesn't even cover it with a dust cover. He just puts it on the side. Opens up the second Daytona, puts the movement on his greasy frickin' mayonnaise-filled palm. Once again, no dust cover. And then he puts the movement and dial from the two-tone into the movement and dial from the yellow gold, and, swaps them out. And you're like, Federico, why might that happen? Well, I'll tell you why. Because a customer probably wanted the two-tone watch or the gold watch with that dial, and he didn't have it, so he swapped it out. So apart from, the butchering of this Rolex movement and not being handled well at all, now you have Franken watches. Two watches where the movement serials don't match with the case serials. And you know what? I'll bet you $100 that when that dealer came by, he probably told it, when the customer came by, he probably told his customer, it's a brand new watch, box and papers. And sure, the serial of the paper will match the serial in between the lugs on a Rolex, but, we all know the movement was from the other watch. I saw him do it myself. Or, I went to this other guy, I went to the watchmaker, and, he was recommended as one of the best watchmakers ever. Now, I have my own watchmaker, but he was, he's in Soho, so he's a little bit out of the way, and I just needed, an anti-magnetism thing done. I don't have the machine at home, TGV, I know I should pick one up. And I go, and I wait this watchmaker's booth. Once again, a booth covered in crap. I mean, hundreds of thousands of screws, springs, dusty. And I asked the guy, and I'm like, hey, do you mind putting this on your time grapher to tell me, how fast it's running? I think it's magnetized. And he's like, what is a time grapher? And I'm like, the little machine that you put the watch on that, kind of reads the movement. He's like, I don't have this. I'm like, okay, no problem. And you're supposed to be one of the best watchmakers on the street. Not to mention, I went to a bunch of dealers, and I saw Pepsi bezel GMT, and I got to pick one up. And I look at the dealer, and I say, hey, bud, can I see the 16750? Gives it to me, and I look at it, and I'm like, how much? He's like, oh, $4,900, which is not a bad price at all, guys. I mean, the piece was a little polished, missing a couple links, but no big deal. Still not a bad piece. I try it on. I noticed the buckle's weird. It doesn't have the security clasp. And I'm like, sir, where's the original buckle for this? He's like, this is original. This is European buckle. And I'm like, no, this is not a European buckle. He's like, it's transitional, only from 88 to 89. And I'm like, okay, thank you so much. Take your watch back. They'll just straight up lie to you. I mean, half these people, they just want to sell a watch. I know this was a little bit more of a ranty video, but I guess my point is, if you're an uninitiated collector, or if you're a new collector, do your homework. These guys are not your friends. More than half would lie to you. All these independent watchmakers, I mean, yes, there's some great independents. My personal watchmaker that I use all the time, it's not my personal watchmaker, but, the guy I use is one of the best independents out there. But I found them after years and years and years. Most of these independent hacks on 47th Street, I mean, they're not even watchmakers. They'll just touch movements without gloves. They'll swap things out. They don't have time graphers. Their desks are hideous. One guy, I brought an AP to get a pin removed. He's like, oh, I don't have the pin. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. I'll take it to another watchmaker. He's like, no, but I'll make it for you. Unoriginal, same, just like the original one, $350. I'm like, absolutely not. Could you imagine like a 90-year-old guy making a pin from scratch to put it on a, $20,000 watch? This stuff happens all the time. So in conclusion, I know this was a little bit of a rant, but you guys need to do your homework and don't be so trustworthy of the gray market. Fact is, and you can believe me or not, but here's the cold hard facts. Online or 47th Street, whenever they say new, 95% of the time, it is not new. Number two, just because it has papers doesn't mean it has a warranty. Warranty is void. Number three, just because it has papers doesn't mean the papers are real. I've seen a ton of fake papers on the street. And number four, don't take their word for it. Most of them are full of crap. They're just lying to you to make the sale. And if I could find all these things in the space of 30 minutes, and I have a keen eye, I've done this for a while, I can only imagine, the new collector full of enthusiasm that thinks he's getting a bunch of great deals. And you know what? He's getting a fakakta watch, as we call it in the industry. Serial numbers that don't match, unoriginal bezels, pins made by, a 90-year-old man, without Loctite. Nobody knows how fast or how slow it's running. And of course, the guy you bought it from told you the watch is brand new. It's great. I mean, literally, it's like almost like a sad comedy, if that makes sense. Commedia dell'arte, as we say in Italian. Do with this information what you will, but it's something to think about. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for sticking around for another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you found it useful. I'll come out with more stuff in just a couple of days. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.